Hi friends, now we are going to discuss about performance testing life cycle. What is mean by performance testing life cycle? During the development, there will be a life cycle called SDLC life cycle. What is mean by SDLC life cycle? Software development life cycle. What it contains? Internally it contains requirements gathering, requirements, next design and analysis, after designing and analysis, implementation, and after implementation we go for testing and we go for deployment or maintenance. These are the typical activities which are followed in SDLC life cycle, and there is a life cycle called STLC life cycle. What we will gather? Here also we will gather the requirements from the client. After that, here also the same, we'll plan on design and plan some strategy that is called as test strategy. And here implementation means if he is manual, he want to do test case design. If he is automation, he will go for test script development, design and development. And after that, both the people will go for execution, and after doing the execution we will go for some summary of the execution. What is there in the summary of the execution? Number of test cases passed, number of test cases failed, what are the defects logged, and finally we will go for test closure. Okay, these are the things which are being developed under phases of STLC cycle. Now I am going to explain about PTLC life cycle. What is mean by PTLC? PTLC means performance testing life cycle. In the performance testing life cycle, here also the same, we will gather some requirements. We'll gather some requirements. Since in the development cycle, what is the requirements? We'll gather from the customer, like those are the requirements called customer requirement specification or software requirement specification, whereas in STLC we can call it as functional requirement specification and non-functional requirement specification. Since performance testing deals with the non-functional activities, here we are calling it as non-functional requirement specification. Okay, what we will ask the client here? We will ask for the response time. What is the response time? If client has depicted response time, we will ask the client about response time. We will ask about number of transactions. What are the different types of transactions available in the application? And after that, application availability. Okay, these are the different type of things which we want to concentrate and ask the customers. And what is the traversals? Means navigations of the system. What are the different types of traversals which are there in the application? These are all the things which you want to ask the customer during the requirements phase, and the document mainly which you want to ask the customer is that application information document and non-functional requirements document. What is application requirements document is it contains all the application traversals. What is the traversal of login? Click on login, enter the credentials, go to home page, log out or set something. These are all the navigation flows in the application. We will call it in the application information document, and in the NFR document we will go for some SLAs. SLAs means some service level agreements that my response time should be less than 3 seconds. My home page should be less than 2 seconds, and my error rate should be with 0%, and my transactions per second should be 10 per second, and my hits per second should be 5 per second. These are some SLAs which are defined by the client, and all these requirements are to be stored in NFR document. Traversals are stored in AAD document, and NFR document all the SLAs and different types of requirements are to be gathered in non-functional requirements. And after that, once we take the requirements, what we will do? We will go for some plan, design and analyze, and plan for a test plan. Before going for these concepts, what we want to do for the client is we want to prepare a document of understanding. What the document is called? DOU document. Document of understanding. What is document of understanding means? Whatever we have understood on the AAD and the NFR document, all those things will have draft a document, and we want to send the document of understanding to the client. Why we want to send the document of understanding to the client? Because obviously if the client or customer accepts what we are going to plan, what we are going to test, how many number of virtual users, how to define the SLAs, if you are very clear about that, once the customer approves, then only we will get go ahead to do all these things. Because once we have done all the things and do the life cycle phases, if anything goes wrong at the end, obviously these things leads to be a failure. That's why during the performance test plan we want to design these things, and to build the confidence of the customer, what we will do? We will do a POC. POC means proof of concept. We will take a scenario, do the performance testing, calculate the metrics and send the same metrics by using the tool to the client, so that the customer get the confidence that these guys can do the performance testing. And in the performance test plan, what are the different types of things will be there? It consists of what is in scope, out scope, what is the purpose of the project, what is the schedule, what is the time span taken for the project, what are the deliverables, what we want to deliver to the client, and about the project entry criteria and exit criteria. What is meant by entry criteria? That the system is stable, and exit criteria that the system is performance compliant with all the activities. After doing this, we will go for test case creation. In performance terminology, we can call it as scenario creation or scenario development. After developing the scenario, we will execute for 1 or 2 users, then we will go for large number of users like 100. This phase is called execution. Okay, here we will execute, that is called as test case execution. After get results, we will analyze the application. After analyzing the application, we will fine tune the application and again do the same execution procedure. Finally, we will go for the test closure by submitting the summary of the reports. This is called as SDLC cycle, STLC cycle, and the final this thing is called the PTLC cycle, and these are the documents which are involved in the performance testing life cycle. From the initial requirements gathering, after that you will go for the test plan or test strategy, after that you can create the scenario creation. After creating the scenario, you will go for executing the tests. Or we will execute the test with large number of users like 100, 200 and 300. After executing the scenarios, we want to analyze the system. What is my response time, what is the throughput, and what are the different types of metrics like CPU and memory. These are the things which is covered, and finally we will go for the tuning process, which is an activity of performance engineering. Obviously these are the things which I have explained, from the core activities to the analyze, which I have explained some other cycles of SDLC and STLC also. And now I am going to explain you about some project context. What are the activities you want to do in a project? Obviously you want to know about the customer budget and what is the deliverables, and these all things we want to do at the time of test plan or test strategy. Okay, and these are the some of the performance testing terminology we want to know before going ahead and do performance testing with a tool. Initially I will go with some virtual users. What is meant by virtual users? Virtual users are imaginary users which they can act like human users. Why human users? Why we want to require virtual users? Because all the human users, they can't access the system at the same time. I said manual testing has enormous effort. That's why we will go for automation. By using the tool, we will impose all these virtual users and we'll get the metrics as the human user. And the second one is ramp up period. Let me take an example for this ramp up period. There is a transaction called login. If you log into the system, one user, and one user he is logging from Chicago, one user he is logging from Denmark, and one user he is logging from Australia. In the same manner, users are not at same place. Users are at different geographical locations. They can't access the website at a single point of time. That's why we'll give some time delay with the scenario, so that virtual users also maintain some time intervals. We can get the accurate results of the, and we can emulate the real performance testing scenario. And coming to business transactions, what do you mean by the business transactions? I have taken an example of Flipkart. It consists of transactions like login, search, add to cart, and buying the product. These are all the different transactions. I can say what are the typical critical transactions which are involved during the business point of view are called as business transactions. And coming to the scripts. Scripts in the sense what we have developed. During the scenario creation, we have developed some of the scripts. Those scripts are called as some scenarios. We will use the scripts and we will impose and we will change the configuration of virtual users, ramp up period, then we can calculate all the metrics with the help of scripts. Anyways, I am going to cover these things during the explanation of the tool. Since it's an introduction, I am going to tell about the terminology of the system. And coming to the tools. Tools in the sense, what are the, as I explained in the previous sessions, like open source tools and commercial tools. With the help of the tools, we can emulate the virtual users, we can emulate the time intervals, we can emulate the think times, pacings. Those all concepts we can cover by using tools. Coming to what is think time and what is pacing. There are certain number of calculations for think time and pacing. Think time means if the time interval between the transactions, suppose login, in the login there are some sub requests. If you want to give time interval between those requests or transactions, it is called as think time. If you want to give time interval between the iterations, iterations means suppose there are transactions like login, logout. If there is one iteration and second iteration, if you want to give time interval between one iteration and second iteration, it is called as pacing. And now I am going to explain about some baseline and benchmark. What is meant by a baseline and what is meant by a benchmark? Initially, we have developed some script. I have recorded the script with one virtual user. After that, I want to play back the same virtual user with the second one. Then I will take the same script as a baseline and I want to do some of the experiments on the script. Why we want to take a baseline? Because suppose there are some experiments which are going on the existing script, something might go wrong. What we want to do? Then we will go back to the baseline script and take the baseline script, again we can do the experiments. That's why we can take the baseline, and we want to calculate some metrics with the baseline and send it to the client. After benchmark means we will execute some more users. Let baseline consists of 30 users, and after that we want to calculate for 60 to 100 users. We want to calculate the metrics of that. That is called as, by using this baseline, by using that benchmark, we will calculate that metrics against that benchmark value. Suppose for a practical example, if the script is containing the response time of 4 seconds, we want to take against the benchmark value, is that system is capable on loading the application within 3 seconds or not. That is called as a benchmark value.